let's move to the next insight blast, and really for me one of the highlights of today. Naif Al-Mutawa, ladies and gentlemen. Woohoo!
Thank you. And is this on? Do I turn it on or is it on?
It's on.
Hello? Hello?
It's on, right, guys? It's working. Yeah, it's working.
It's working. Okay. Well, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to today. My talk is gonna be a combination of kind of history, a little bit politics, try to keep it from T-word and into arts and entertainment, which is how I chose to address tolerance and intolerance. But just to give a backdrop as to why this slide is up first, one can't escape from the intolerance that's being espoused in the name of my religion. And just to go back to the Danish cartoon controversy or what happened with Charlie Hebdo, this whole idea about images in Islam and how it's against the religion, all this stuff, people kind of tend to forget that this was the second commandment that came to Moses, right? This idea of not worshiping images. And the question is, well, why have the other faiths been able to find different interpretations of this that takes it outside of the realm of conflict, whereas we're still stuck in that place? And I think a lot of that has to do with language and the evolution of language. So for over 1,000 years, the language of religion in Europe was that of Latin. But over the years, because languages breathe and they grow, vulgar Latin, French, Italian, the stuff that the lower classes spoke, came up, right? And with every year, the Pope had more and more control over language and therefore more control over religion. Okay, and extremism was not born with Islam. They're in other religions. And so what happened that broke this for Europe is King Henry, who really, 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 really wanted that divorce, right? And the Pope wouldn't grant it, so he translated the Bible into English and Martin Luther into German, and Europe woke up. Europe woke up because finally the language they spoke matched the language they wrote in, which matched the language that they thought in. Go back to my part of the world. Every prophet, we believe, came with a miracle. The prophet Moses could turn a stick into a snake because the language of the day was magic. But the prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, his miracle was the language in which the Quran came. But if your miracle is language and language evolves, what do you do? And what we did is we came up with all kinds of rules to grab it from breathing, and therefore disconnected the relationship between the language we speak in the Arab world and the language we think in and the language we write in, and gave more control over interpretation to those that speak the Latin in our part of the world. Okay? So against that backdrop, I'll introduce myself. My name is Naif. I'm a clinical psychologist. I teach at the medical school in Kuwait, where I've been teaching for the last 12 years. I'm a hypnotherapist, licensed in New York, and recently came out of a 1.5-year trial on blasphemy, which I came out not guilty. Who knew? But it was an ordeal. But I want to kind of take you into where this is coming from, the history behind it, and how I've been using arts and culture to promote tolerance in my country. So it starts with my first book, which I did when I was 24. I just came back from the US. A man had been fired from his job in a Kuwaiti dry cleaning company because of his religion, which apparently is important when you're a dry cleaner. And the guy that fired him gave out leaflets to the community apologizing that had he known this guy's religion, he wouldn't have hired him to begin with. And I thought, oh my God. So I wrote about it in the newspapers. Didn't hit the spot for me, so I wrote and illustrated my first book called To Bounce or Not to Bounce, which is about a land called Bouncy Land, where everybody's round. In that society, they judge you based on two values: how high you bounce and how fast you roll. That's it. Main character is born as a half circle, can't do either. His parents are dreaming about what he's going to be when he grows up. He's a half circle, can't do either. And people judge them because he can't do the two things that are expected in the society. So he tries to change himself. They make fun of him in school. At the end, though, there's a archetypical flood. This is, where do I point this for it to move? There we go. So because of his shape, he turns into a boat, and he saves them one by one and forces society to reevaluate the importance of diversity. So it's about gender equality, it's about height, weight, whatever it is you want. It's meant to reflect the reader's thinking depending on their age and where they are. And when I do this at schools, usually during bullying week, I get asked to do this, or anti-bullying week. The kids who are 6 and 7, they make fun of you if your shoes are old or your haircut. But when you're in high school, they make fun of you if you're from a Bedouin family versus non-Bedouin, or your religious sect, or etc. So it basically reflects the reader's thinking. So this book ended up winning an award from UNESCO for tolerance in '97, and I end up doing a sequel called What's in a Name, was English, came out in Arabic. And then he goes to a land called Rainbow Land, where everybody's a half circle like him, and he expects acceptance, but they don't accept him, you see, because they're more sophisticated in their prejudice in Rainbow Land. So they judge you according to the color of your bow tie and where it is on the rainbow. So red is better than orange, better than yellow, all the way down to violet, the worst place in societies. And they have marriage laws of any good society might. If you have a red bow tie, you can't marry anybody with a blue ribbon, because what does red and blue give you? Yeah, last place on the rainbow. Okay? So when he asked them why they live their life in that way, they point up to the sky. They say it's the natural order of things. Very rightist argument. And when he points to the reflection of the rainbow in the river, he shows them that what's on the bottom is now on top. Okay? This book did fine. My third book got banned. And I quit writing at the age of 27 and came back with my superheroes 5 years later. So book 3, I wrote, I'm the father of 6 boys. And usually when I tell people this in the West, they say, you have any girls? I say, we don't talk about them. If I had a girl, I'd tell you I have 6 boys. But when Muhammad, my first son, when his mom was pregnant with him, I wrote a book called about a land called Thailand, but I spelled it Thai, T-I-E land. And in Thailand, they judge you. They're huge. They're these larger-than-life characters, and they wear neckties, not bow ties. So 2 new things got introduced to the storyline. So he goes to visit this place with his father, this main character, Bouncy Jr., the half circle, and for some reason, nobody knows why, all the Thailanders are now the same size as everybody else. They ain't so big anymore. But because of their laws, their ties are disproportionate to their body size. So when they roll, their ties get under them, make them slow and inefficient. And when they bounce, their ties cover their eyes. They don't know where they're going to land. And those that take off their tie in protest get shunned. So when he asks to see the law says you must wear of the ties of your fathers, not the ties of your fathers. So they get every tailor in town, every tie in town, and from the same material, they cut out new ties to better serve their modern day needs. So I get asked the Ministry of Information, point blank, this is about the Quran, isn't it? And I said, huh? I said, do you think somebody reading this in London or Tokyo is going to think Quran? It's about tradition and modernity. It's for my son. I mean, he's now 20, but I mean, and we're having this tug, as any father-son might, about what's right and wrong in tradition, whatever. That's what it was about. It wouldn't fly with them. I quit writing at 27 and came back with my superheroes. So, I'm going to just skip this slide. Okay. Okay, I see what happened. The wrong slide got deleted. No problem. So I'll take you now to, that was age 24. Age 30, I had just graduated with my doctorate. I had completed a few master's degrees, including an MBA. Came to London. I was in a cab ride going from Edgware Road to Harrods, which is a pilgrimage every Kuwaiti makes once a summer. And in that cab, my sister turned to me and said, Naif, you told me that after school you go back to writing. I'd illustrate. I can't draw. You saw my circles, and my circles looked like triangles. Like those were my drawings. So I said, yeah. She said, what do you think? Because she's very good. She's an artist. I wanted her to shut up. I mean, I wasn't thinking going back to writing for kids. I just did all these degrees. Didn't make sense. So I said, for me to go back now, it's got to be something that has the potential of Pokemon. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. So she shut up. But I started to free associate, as any New York-trained psychologist might. So I said Pokemon. My next thought was there had been a fatwa against Pokemon. My next thought was my God, what's happened to Islam, and who's making these random decisions for my children? My next thought was Allah or God, which according to Muslims has 99 attributes, which by the time I got to Harrods brought me full circle back to Pokemon, which is a concept of 1,000 attributes. And I had the beginnings of what became the 99, my superheroes. And I developed a pitch, and the pitch went like this. This is back in 2003. I went to my investors, and I said, all superheroes are based on a Judeo-Christian archetype. So like the prophets, all the superheroes are missing their parents. Batman's parents die at 6. Superman's parents die in Krypton. Spider-Man's raised by his aunt and uncle. And all of them, like the prophets, have a message delivered from above through a messenger. The prophets get it from God through Gabriel, but Peter Parker's saying in that photograph, when the spider descends from above and gives him his bite, it's Gabriel coming down. Or when Superman's parents send him to new parents in a little spaceship, that's the story of Moses on the Nile. And the reason for this is because there's a Western conspiracy. No, I'm kidding. The Bible is known as the greatest story ever told. Over 1 billion people transact in that language, right? So Hollywood just repackages it. And so there's new stories based on older architecture. My pitch to my investors is nobody's done this with the Quran. The only ones using it in the mass media are the bad guys. Let me go in, lift some storylines, secularize them, and create what became my superheroes. So I was able to raise money, and I tell people of all my accomplishments, the one that I'm the proudest of is I'm the only Kuwaiti that went to Lebanon and actually came out with money. So this is 2003, Baghdad had just fallen, but over the course of history, Baghdad has fallen many times. One of the most famous is in 1258 when the Mongols invade and throw all the books from Dar al-Hikmah library into the Tigris, and the Tigris changes color with ink. I rewrote that story use historical fiction. So in my version, all that knowledge in the books gets saved onto 99 stones, which are smuggled out of Arabia into Andalusia and Spain, where they're safe for 200 years. But when Grenada falls, the stones are dispersed all over the world. So 33 go on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria and are spread in the New World. 33 go on the Silk Road to China, Asia, and Southeast Asia. And 33 are between Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And now it's 2016, and you have 99 heroes from 99 different countries, each of which having one of these attributes that God has in the Quran, which are basic human values, values that all of us share as human beings: generosity, wisdom, foresight, just basic stuff. Some of the characters: the American hero, Saudi hero. We put a Saudi and an Iranian hero on American television 5 years ago, without anybody noticing, which is fantastic. From Indonesia, from the UK, etc. We got very lucky with the press. Story with that is I cornered a New York Times journalist before I even had a product in December 2005, and I pitched him. I think I scared him, because he said, "Okay, we'll write about you if you just leave me alone." And he said, "But Islam and cartoons it's not a timely story." He said, "It could be next month, it could be next year, just wait." So I called him up New Year. I said, "Happy New Year." He said, "Thanks, we had a baby." I said, "Congratulations, like I care. When's the story coming out?" And he said, "Naif, just wait." And then a few days after that, what happens? The world explodes in the Danish cartoon controversy. I became timely. Okay, so they started chasing me, and the full page in the New York Times would change my life forever, because anybody Googling Islam and cartoon, guess what they got? They got me. Okay? It led to a theme park that launched in Kuwait, the 99 Village theme park. It led to various language editions of the 99 comic books, how we started. It led to a couple of licensing deals, but also led to a TV show, which was written by the writers of Batman, Star Wars, etc., which was on TV all over the world. Here in the UK, it was on RTE. Big resistance in Europe to our project. So it came out, and I'll tell you about the story in the US, but came out all over the world, came out on Cartoon Network in China, came out and became the first IP from our region to actually go global. This led to a lot of fun stuff. So my fifth boy, when he was born on New Year's Day 2009, my dad called me and said, "I want you to call him Barack. Obama was going to be president in 20 days. I said, "No, thank you." And then somebody else called. They said, "We heard you had a child." I said, "Yes." They said, "Boy or girl?" I said, "What do you think?" And they said, "Great. Now you have enough boys to liberate Palestine." And I thought, what happened to playing basketball, right? So I took those two thoughts and I wrote an article called Naif Al-Mutawa about why I would not name my son Barack. So who publishes this? The Chicago Tribune. On Inauguration Day, January 20th, a few days later, in the op-ed pages. So you know the president saw it. So park that. That same day, Marvel releases a copy of Spider-Man with Obama on the cover with Spider-Man, which is a signal to the world that the president likes comic books. I didn't know, which is not important, but what was important is Paul Levitz, a friend of mine who headed DC Comics, didn't know either. So Paul's Jewish, and his son was dating a Muslim woman. And I write about religion a lot, and we have lunch once in a while, and we talk religion and stuff. And so Paul, I went to him, had lunch with him in February that year, and I said, "Paul, Marvel beat you." He said, "I know, we're still trying to figure out how to respond." I said, "I have the solution." And I pitched him an idea which he loved, which I didn't expect. So they say, you don't know what you're going to get until you ask for it. So I said, how about when the president reaches out to the Muslim world, which eventually became the talk from Cairo, how about the 99 reach back out to Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, which is the first time in 15 years they actually do a crossover with characters they don't own. 6 books came out that have Batman, Superman, and a Wonder Woman who finally found her clothes after 70 years of looking. They were there. Just wearing a jacket, and I'm actually going to skip the video, but basically the president had a few words to say about this project, called it the most innovative response to his Cairo speech, which was an amazing highlight for us. But that opened up the gates of hell for me, because what happened is I became guilty by association, both to the rightist groups in the US as well as the rightist groups back home. So we got our first fatwa from Fox News. Okay. Obama's Muslim and this proves it. He's trying to brainwash your children using Sharia superheroes. Anybody watching the show become radicalized, become a jihadi. My favorite criticism was we can't let those Muslims brainwash our children like the Mexicans did with Dora the Explorer. This happened, and you know who they voted for, right? Anyway, I didn't say the word. But this also, so New Year's Eve 2013, big hashtag on Twitter wants to put me on trial. So same thing. So back home, I became also non grata. So this lawyer behind it started. Then he wrote to the sheikh in Saudi, the 7 kind of council, and put things in perspective. So a fatwa is the answer to a question without checking the contents of the question. There's no due diligence. So if you ask the question to the right, you can answer the right. You ask it to the left, you can answer the left. Okay? So this council He wrote to them, so they give a fatwa against the 99. Now, two interesting things. One of the people that actually signed the fatwa for the 99 a few years before, because we were funded by a Saudi Islamic bank. Okay? So again, the question so I agree with what they said about the 99, 100%. They're correct in what they said. The problem is, it's garbage in, garbage out. What the information they were given was all lies. But this put me in a position for the first time of giving a talk, because I give talks in Saudi all the time. My wife's Saudi. My first post-fatwa talk in Saudi was in May, a couple months later. And I was thinking, do I fly? I was feeling a bit scared. Like maybe I should drive to the border. There's a problem. I drive back. It's like, you know what? I'm not going to let them terrorize me. I'm just going to go. And I went. There was no problem. One of the kids asked me, said, have you ever been sued because of the 99? And I said, that's an interesting question for a 10-year-old. Why? So well, our religion teacher said not to watch the show because nothing good will come of it. And I said, so what'd you do? He said, honestly, we had never heard of it. We all went and watched it, and we loved it. I was like, okay. So he comes back again. So the government ignores his call for my trial. He comes back again in June, tries to follow me on Twitter. I block him, open the phone, 5 missed calls from a police station in a remote part of Kuwait. And Kuwait's small, but I mean, there are places I haven't been to. So he found his cousin at a police station who was willing to call me in for questioning. Okay? So I start to get worried because after this, he gets another fatwa from Kuwait. Again, same garbage in, garbage out. And then the death threats start happening. Thousands on Twitter. The hashtag is who's going to kill me. My mother finds out because it's on the front page of Kuwait's newspapers. So this led to just an escalation. And so and in the end, it was the U.S. State Department that interfered on my behalf to take the hashtag down because according to Twitter's policies, they kept saying, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm like, hire somebody who knows Arabic because this is not a cool hashtag to have on there. So somebody who thought, there we go. This is a selfie outside my interrogation at the police station. It was actually a fun interrogation. It was as far as blasphemy interrogations go, it was actually quite humane. But they were very professional, and the one question I got asked after it was months of stress. I didn't know what to expect. He says, you've been accused of insulting God and Islam, and what do you have to say? And I started laughing, totally unrehearsed laugh from the heart, and I said, me, as for 10 years, we've been the only positive voice talking about positive values in Islam. And meanwhile, while this drama is taking place in Kuwait, Sheikh Mohammed awards me the Islamic Economy Award for this project for media. Just see kind of what's happening in our part of the world. So it's not all bad news. And the government has now, in Kuwait, has put me on the Supreme Education Council, which is interesting given that the Islamists who are after me are actually going to be back in parliament. The elections are on Saturday. So we'll see how the next chapter of this plays out. So how do you respond to that? How do you respond to this intolerance and these death threats in a way that is constructive? So I thought, go back to basics. Go back to my original characters. So this new book's coming out in Saudi soon. And basically, it's called Triangular Traditions. And the character, this is the land before Bouncy Land, where nobody has any bow ties. They're just circles. Okay? And they find triangles. One of them kind of goes into a triangle field and gets hurt. It pokes him. It's like, what's this? They have no idea what this thing is. And so they have a council meeting. They get together and they decide that all the boys would wear the triangles on their chins and all the girls would wear them on their heads. Okay, so that seemed like a cool tradition to start. They started that. But after a while, people weren't happy. They're like, this is itchy. This is itchy. I don't want to do this anymore. So some of them decide, let's take these off and let's see what else we can do. So they figured out by playing with the triangles, they can create bow ties and ribbons. So they do that. These guys are happier now. Nothing on their chins or heads. But then when the elders find out, they say, no, you can't do that. So they draw a line in the sand, and those that want to wear them on their head and their chins go to the east of the line, and those that wear the bow ties go to the west of the line. So all's good, but the next generation, you have people from each side wanting to be like the other side, right? So, they kind of, and so what happens is that, this time it's serious. Both sides say, no, this can't happen. This violates our traditions. So they take away their triangles, and from the same cultural constructs that represent religion, tradition, whatever it is you want, they create weapons this time. And from the triangles, they create spears and arrows, and they go to war against each other. And they realize generation after generation that they're just killing themselves, right? And so then they decide to get together, and from the same triangles, they create slides for entertainment. rooftops for security, and pyramids for culture. And together they work on a journey for peace. So that's how I chose to respond to what happened. This is coming out in Saudi soon, hopefully. So this is where I started. It's my office in Kuwait where I'm seeing clients. I've been doing this for many, many years. And my 99 for me was an opportunity of, when you're a psychologist, you work with one person an hour. But I believe media isn't just about reflecting reality. Media can actually create reality. And we've heard a couple examples here from various insight blasts. And this has been used effectively all over the world. And so this is one of the things that I wanted to be involved in and very proud of what I've been able to work with. So out of curiosity, how many people have read The Catcher in the Rye? Okay. How many of you have killed in the name of that book? Nobody's committed any murders after reading the book? No? You laugh, but 37 years ago, Mark David Chapman shot and killed John Lennon with a copy of that book in his hand. And he told police that book drove him to kill. A year later, John Hinckley tried to kill President Reagan. He too referred to the same book. So I leave you with a question. Whose fault is that? The book? Or the deranged lunatic who pulled out his own messaging? Thank you.